What's up, everybody? It's Danny Green here, back with Inside the Green Room. Co-host Harrison Sanford. It's been a minute. This is brought to you by Jack in the Box, and we have special guests on today. Give us some input, some information on what's to come in the near future. Harrison, take it away.
Yeah, we glad to be back. It's been way too long. A lot has
Yeah.
happened in our society, not just in the basketball world, but in the world in general, since the last time we got to do a podcast. Um, there's been issues with social injustice. There's obviously the pandemic that's still going on. And in the midst of all that, Danny happened to get engaged. So that's also something we're going to talk about as well.
A lot going on.
But right now we have Bakari Sellers. You've seen him a number of times on CNN. We're happy to have you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you for
joining
having me. Happy birthday. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. I'm trying to grow up, be like you. It's been a big month. It's a engagement, birthday. Just taking it in stride, trying to get it all done before we get into the bubble. But speaking of the bubble, man, a couple of players recently have expressed their concern about finishing the season because of social injustice concerns. Where do you stand on this? Us coming to the court, how do you think this can affect, change, or could be beneficial or non-beneficial for us playing or playing?
So, I mean, I have to be honest with you. I don't feel as if I had the audacity to tell NBA hoopers when they should and shouldn't play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still a lifetime hoops all-star, two-time MVP. But that doesn't mean that I should be out here telling you guys when to play. All I can say is that in the NBA playoffs, it's all eyes on you. It's one of the largest stages in the entire world. And you will have an opportunity, unlike anybody else, during that playoff time to make whatever type of social justice stance you want to make. But this time period is a little different. It's unique because unlike in the 60s and 70s, when you had the era of Jim Brown, when you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we've seen that picture of all of these legends sitting at the table together. Now you're starting to see it from top down. You're seeing it from, LeBron and Kawhi all the way down to the 15th man and the trainer. It's a entire team effort. And so I'm very proud of the guys for what they're doing. I say all of that to say, though, you have to follow your heart. And I do believe that you'll have an opportunity, if you so choose to play, not to only give us selfishly a moment of entertainment as we're going through this quarantine period. But you'll also have the entire stage. You'll have the entire world looking at you. We saw Bubba Wallace today in Talladega. Who would have ever guessed that NASCAR is running laps around the NFL in terms of social justice? And so it's just with that platform, you can do so much. So if you choose to play, I would advise all of you all to make the most of it.
I agree. And right now it's the week. We have last couple of days before everybody has to decide whether they're going to opt in or opt out, figuring out roster spots, so we have until about a day or two before guys have to give a notification to their organization that I'm coming, that I'm not going. But I'm with you. I think we can, entertain and play and do everything. And at the same time, still, bring our passions down there and use that stage to get the progress that we want and need.
So are you playing? I mean, we going to break some news today?
I'm playing. I think everybody knows that I'm playing. There's no secret out there. But the whole roster, the rest of our roster is kind of unsure. We're not sure who if everybody's going to be there. But I've had to guess, I would say at least 95% of us on our roster are going to play and going to go. There's a 5-10% chance we don't know of the other guys might not show up. But said it's okay. You don't have to. Your opinion is your opinion. You don't. It's not going to say you're telling us what to play, what to do, what not to do. It's okay to have an opinion. If you have a strong opinion of, you guys probably will be better to play because of stage. And I agree with you. It's better to get down there. Even if you don't play down there, you still use that stage, that media stage, to get across what you want to get across. So, Harrison,
it's for me, it's a pretty cool experience watching so many guys actually care about this. Mm-hmm. And so many guys finding their voice. And, with all due respect to y'all old heads, I'm even more proud of the college athletes that are, speaking their mind. And, I was watching the running back from Mississippi State today, talking about the Confederate flag in Mississippi, telling them that the flag should come down. And so, whether or not you believe this or not, these young guys, they're following your lead. And so the more you all speak up, the more you're encouraging an entire generation of young athletes to speak up too.
Bakari, one of the things that can happen when the players are in Orlando, as we mentioned before, is affecting change. And while the protests are good and all these signs of solidarity are great from the companies that we've seen, what we really need in order to address these issues are policy changes. And we've seen some legislation that has come out in certain states and certain federal rules that it seems that might be coming into play in terms of, for example, no chokeholds. We've seen that the no-knock warrant can potentially be implemented. I know it's a debate between the Democratic and Republican side. And we've seen qualified immunity, I think, is no longer as eliminated now in the state of Colorado. You're the expert here, so you could clarify that with me. But what else do we need to see in terms of legislation that wouldn't put the onus on the players in bringing these things to light by the time they get to Orlando? Obviously, everything can't be accomplished in weeks, but what can we do, or what can be done in terms of legislation that will help?
So, I mean, the first thing is, I mean, the kind of the age-old adage is you can't change policy without changing policymakers. And so using your voice and encouraging people to register to vote up and down the ballot is extremely important. I'm proud of the organization that LeBron and some of the other guys have put together to go out and register people to vote. That's so important. What you're talking about are various policy initiatives, and I think that people have to have solutions, right? I'm a very solution-oriented person. Like, what's the purpose? What's the goal? And so a few of the things that we should be asking for, and I hope the players take this initiative and this platform to ask for, are doing things like having a nationalized database for officer misconduct. So what does that mean? That means right now I'm in North Carolina. You beat somebody's ass in a police department in Charlotte, you can go to Chapel Hill and be chief of police, right? There's no uniform database to document that misconduct. We need to have a nationalized use of force standards and guidelines, so we know what is being taught. We can have input from professionals, and the community knows what these guidelines are. That's all well and good until they still break the law. I don't know if you just saw 2 or 3 days ago in New York where the chokehold is outlawed, but they still choke this dude out, right? So to get to that point, we have to lower the standard whereby we can charge people with federal criminal conduct violations. Eric Holder said that the reason that Eric Gardner's officer wasn't charged was because the standard was, in Eric Holder's words, the standard was too damn high. And then one of the things that Tim Scott is actually doing extremely well on the Republican side is he's using the purse strings of the Department of Justice. I want to be extremely clear and not sensationalize when I say this, but Breonna Taylor and George Floyd literally paid for the departments that killed them. Our tax dollars go to the Department of Justice where they implement these grants, and these grants don't have any oversight, no transparency, no accountability. And so we're actually sending money out to law enforcement departments right now that are then using things like chokehold, using things like practices that should be banned, et cetera. And so we have to have some transparency in that. Those are really, really simple things that I think that everyone can kind of wrap their head around, things that we should be pushing for. And qualified immunity for me, let me explain to everyone watching and listening what that is. Qualified immunity, I'm a lawyer. And when I go in and I sue a law enforcement department, I cannot sue that officer. I can sue the department, but I can't sue that officer because that officer has immunity and can hide behind that shield. That's not a deterrent, right? You're more likely to think twice if I can take away your pension or take away your salary or take away your retirement or take your house than you are if you can hide behind whatever organization you're a part of. And so that for me is an important step in trying to get what we call criminal justice reform. And I'm gonna just say the last thing, because all of these, this is not just about criminal justice reform. While we're having this conversation and taking statues down is all well and good and all that stuff. And while Ben and Jerry's and Netflix and everybody are throwing their money at it, please continue to throw your money at the problem, the good organizations, right? I want to know how many Black people they have in their C-suite. I want to know how they're empowering Black folk. Diddy would always say that, many times people have the illusion of inclusion. I want to see how you're including Black folk in your corporate structure instead of just putting out a statement or, that I keep picking on the NFL because they really are horrible about this. They have 2-3 Black coaches and 2 or 3 Black GMs. That's it. So when are you going to match your works with that faith?
Instead of just covering it with money, donations, or just statements.
Correct.
Agreed. And you mentioned, these people that have put their money and their tax dollars into, I guess, these departments, these forces, such as Breonna Taylor. What kind of message does it send when these officers who killed her are not arrested?
Well, I mean, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 17-month-old daughter. You might hear the 17-month-old. She's a twin, so she
Congratulations,
runs.
man.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
she's running around here with her brother. But you know, it's just hard because Black women in this country always have to play for crumbs, and they're never uplifted. And so, you know, Breonna Taylor should be held in the same breath as George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Breonna Taylor was an EMT that was literally sitting in her house and was gunned down. I mean, she was doing nothing wrong and everything right. And so I was just on Tamron Hall recently with my dad and my daughter, and my daughter was talking about the strength of my wife, and she was also talking about Breonna Taylor and just saying she wanted to live for her. And so for young brown girls in this country, you got to let them know that they can be queens. You got to let them know that they have a crown above their head that they can grow into, and that we, you know, the fellas on this call have to continue to lift them up and make spaces for them, even when they're not being talked about.
Is there any loopholes or anything that you haven't mentioned or discussed, or reasons why, and you might have brought it up and maybe you need to reiterate this, why these officers haven't been arrested? What do we need to change, or what loopholes or what things in the system that needs to be looked at and not overlooked to get these officers that will kill these people who have putting their tax dollars into paying, you know, these departments?
I mean, it's really, really hard to arrest officers, and it's really, really hard to prosecute officers. I don't know if y'all know this, but you know, Hurricane Chris got arrested last week.
Did not know that.
You just
Did not know that.
random side note. Don't ask me why I know all of this random.
In Carolina, he's a South rapper.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's when I listened to Hurricane Chris when I was in college. So that's the last time I heard him. That was the first and last time I probably heard Hurricane Chris. Chapel Hill.
Hurricane Chris on Friday shot somebody at a gas station, got arrested that night, right? Shot somebody, dead, arrested that night. Ahmaud Arbery's killers, it took 73 days, I believe, 74 days for them to be arrested. Breonna Taylor's killers have been out for over 100 days. And I just use that juxtaposition so you see that law enforcement moves swiftly in some cases and not in others. And you asked a good question. The only thing that I would ask you to do is continue to use your platform. I mean, imagine if y'all in the NBA playoffs and everybody comes out with a Breonna Taylor t-shirt on. Not that whack t-shirt thing y'all did for Donald Sterling. That was lame.
Yeah.
That was weird. But like, you actually put Breonna Taylor's name on your shirt.
Kind of like the I Can't Breathe shirts they had.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that would be dope, because it would then, you know, give her family a sense that we remember her. It would uplift her spirit. And most people don't know that the Attorney General in Kentucky is a Republican, but he's a Black man. He's a Black Republican, a young guy. And, you know, make sure that you are tweeting him. Make sure you're calling him. Make sure, you know, when you guys put this pod up, man, put the number for the Kentucky Attorney General's office in there, so people know where to go and reach out and say, we need to make sure that there's justice in the Breonna Taylor case.
For sure. And, you know, there's been a lot of protests going on, and I've been fortunate and lucky enough to safely attend, you know, one or two. And it's been beautiful to see, man. You know, I see all different cultures, all different races, colors coming together as a unit and actually trying to get some progress. And a lot of them are protesting about defunding police. If we did that, what would that do? Or first of all, what does the protesting, large numbers of protesters do? And, you know, defunding police, what would that do for our communities?
So let's explain defunding police, because defunding police doesn't mean that when you call 911, ain't nobody going to show up. Right? That's not what defund police means. What we're saying when people say, and I think the slogan sucks. I think it's a bad slogan, but it is what it is. You know, defund police means that we're going to spend those monies, because, you know, right now, 55% of the Los Angeles budget is law enforcement. 55%. I mean, that's huge, right? That's bloated. I mean, you have these law enforcement agencies with tanks. We have law enforcement agencies with drones, with all of these military grade weapons, etc. Imagine you cut some of those dollars and you put it into mental health support. Imagine you cut some of those dollars and do summer work programs for kids so they can be occupied and stay out of trouble, or after school programs. What if you know, there's a correlation between you know, having a large homeless population and people who commit small crimes, who really don't need to be in jail in the first place. So what happens if you address the need for housing? There's so much you can do with those funds. And so you're redirecting funds. And I appreciate the energy for everybody who's protesting. Protest really matters, and it's working. So people need to keep protesting, because as we've seen, the protests really are working.
Bakari, one of the things that I do like what I've seen from these recent protests, and, Black people have been talking about police brutality for ages now. But I think the one thing that's unique to this new uprising is the discussion about systemic racism and bias that's being put on the forefront of American culture. So now that that's more in the limelight now, as opposed to just police brutality, what tangible things would you like to see for you to feel as if America is embracing the fact that there is systemic racism? And I know there's people on the other side of the aisle, the Republican aisle, who don't want to acknowledge that there is systemic racism. But, as a Black man in America, I feel very differently. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel the same way.
Yeah, man, it took us 7 years just to get people to say Black Lives Matter. That's a good question. I mean, y'all are channeling your inner Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon up here today. That's a really good question. My father, I don't know if y'all knew this, but my father was shot February 8th, 1968, and what's called the Orangeburg Massacre. It's not a story that's talked about that much in your history books, but he was, they were leading, my dad was in SNCC, and they were leading a protest. And South Carolina State troopers fired shots into a group of students while they were protesting on the campus of South Carolina State. Yeah. 3 students were killed: Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and Delano Middleton. And my dad was shot. He was one of 28 that was wounded. Ironically enough, they charged and tried all the officers who fired shots, all 8 officers, 9 officers, and they were all found not guilty. And they ended up arresting my dad because they knew him to be a member of SNCC, and they charged him with, they actually charged him with 5 felony counts. He was looking at 75 years in prison. And they denied his bond after they arrested him. And then he went to trial a few years later. And the lead investigator said he misplaced all the evidence, but he did remember my dad standing on top of a fire truck, lighting a Bic and saying, "Burn, baby, burn." And so my dad was charged, tried, and convicted of rioting. He went to prison for a year. This was the second time he went to prison. The first time he went to prison was for not going to the Vietnam War. He didn't go in the draft. And I share that story with you because my father was not only shot, but then he was arrested and in prison. And my sister was actually born while my father was in prison. This injustice in this country, man, this systemic injustice that we're talking about has been going on for a very long period of time. I mean, I think about Emmett Till and just his face, for allegedly whistling at a white woman who just before she died a couple of years ago admitted that she was lying. So I'm very, very hopeful that we will get to the point where we can address this, but we have to first acknowledge the problem exists. And, for me, I come from a small town called Denmark, South Carolina, and it's in a food desert where you can't go 2-3 miles and get healthy food alternatives. The water's not clean. The schools are falling apart. I mean, this is the condition that many Black folk, especially Black folk in the South, are grown up in and raised in. And so those are the levels of systemic oppression that we have to deconstruct. And so whether or not it's raising awareness or whether or not you're actually a part of these systems trying to tear them down, we have a lot of work to do. But first, we have to even acknowledge the problem is there.
Man, that's tough. That's crazy. Get shot, get arrested. Yeah. Unbelievable, bro.
Story of the 60s, man. Black people in the 60s, man.
So, I mean, we're obviously still on topic, but we're going to kind of reroute a little bit.
Sure.
How do we fight against the voter suppression? Obviously, with the pandemic going on, particularly with the COVID-19 precautions, how do we, I guess, operate around that? How do we fight it? How do we maneuver or be the most effective with the COVID precautions?
That's tough, man. So one of the things we have to do is make sure that in every state they're enabling absentee voting. And that's first. And we have 30 days in South Carolina. You should have more than that. And no excuse absentee, so you can just go vote early. We should also be pushing for mail-in ballots. Like the president votes by mail. Ain't no reason that y'all shouldn't be able to vote by mail. And those are 2 really, really simple things because you shouldn't have to risk dying to go vote. Although weirdly enough, your life does depend on voting in this election. You shouldn't have to necessarily, there were, I think about 8 people who caught COVID while they were in the Wisconsin elections not that long ago. And so That's something that we have to be very, very cognizant of and very, very aware of. And we have to make it as safe and secure as possible. But mail-in balloting and absentee votes are the most important thing. And if people don't think that voter suppression is real, look at the Kentucky election that's happening on Tuesday, where they've cut the number of precincts. And then you can just look in Georgia. Georgia's like reminiscent of the 1950s and 60s and what they're doing in terms of not having the proper number of ballots, or not even giving them electrical strips for the machines, people having to wait. People literally had to wait 6-7 hours to cast a ballot in black parts of town. That suppression is real. And so we have to do everything we can to call it out and root it out.
Bakari, I was talking to Danny not too long ago, and a couple of friends of mine as well. My level of appreciation for everything that civil rights leaders did back during the original civil rights movement has multiplied immensely since then, because of everything that's happened now in our country. And I think Danny and I are appreciative of you coming on and continuing to fight the fight, because let's keep it real, a lot of us just stay in our world. We play basketball, we talk about basketball, and we stay in our circle. But this pandemic has really allowed us and Americans in general to really wake up to what's been happening in our country. And so for somebody like you who's been on the fight since day one, didn't need a pandemic, on behalf of Danny and I, we are thankful for you and people who are fighting like you.
Man, I'm just thankful for y'all, because this is, there are going to be people who watch who, are fans of CNN and news folk who will watch and pick it up and be proud that three brothers can sit here and have a conversation like this. And then there are going to be people who you guys have an audience with that will be able to maybe learn something and become more active. At the end of the day, we have to have difficult conversations. That's what's necessary. We have to have tough conversations. And with our platforms, all of our respective platforms, just like you're talking about those leaders of the past, we can't let their contributions be in vain. We have to utilize our platforms to the best of our ability so our children can one day be free.
Before we go and before Danny says goodbye, make sure you catch Bakari's newest book, My Vanishing Country.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, My Vanishing Country.
Let's see the book. Let's see the book one more time.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that awesome picture.
Right there. A young legend.
And Bakari also has a podcast coming out on the Ringer Network, I believe, that will follow the 2020 election, which I think everybody who's listening can acknowledge that the 2020 election is going to be massive to the future.
We're gonna get Danny Green on that podcast, man. From the bubble.
Sure.
I don't want it till you in the bubble, because you ain't gonna have nothing to do. So.
I have plenty of time in the bubble, man. First and foremost, man, I appreciate your time, man. Educating me, us, our fans, our people, on this platform of the proper steps that we need to take moving forward to get the progression that we want. So I've learned a lot today. Hopefully the viewers have. Appreciate you taking the time. We will circle back again. Congratulations on the book, the twins. 5 years of marriage, man. It's amazing. So I'm trying to be like you one day. I'm just trying to grow up. So hopefully on that I'll get a book. Got the podcast, but be married for 5 years, have some kids. But appreciate the time, man. It's been amazing. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very, very informative. So thanks once again, man, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
We're back with more Inside the Green Room with Danny Green. I'm Harrison Sanford. That conversation we previously had with Bakari Sellers, I hope you guys were able to absorb it and able to use it as we go forward here, as we continue to fight social injustice and we try to create equality around the world. We have a conversation with Zach Lowe after this little back and forth I'll have with Danny. So we'll talk about the Orlando bubble and things of that nature. But first and foremost, today we're taping is June 22nd. It's Danny's birthday. You feeling older?
Mentally, emotionally, yeah. Body's actually staying pretty solid. Trying to keep the body young, but some days it feels older than what it is. You wake up, you forget what you did the day before, but your body will remind you where your bumps and bruises are, and you don't have to try to remember what the hell did I do yesterday? Where my calf hurts, or something like that. But everything's been good, man. It's been solid. Got a little workout in. Still in the gym with guys, getting prepared, getting ready for this bubble. So enjoying.
When you get older, unfortunately, a great birthday is just like getting your work done and getting a good meal. That's it. Versus like 26, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, I've never been a big celebrator partier for myself. But definitely when you're younger, you celebrate it a little differently now. you get older, you celebrate by just being able to relax and chill at home with your close ones, man, especially during a pandemic. So I'm enjoying it, enjoying have absolutely nothing to do and absolutely wanting to do nothing. So this has been relaxing, it's been fun, and been calm and cooling, and it's a collective.
Last year, this time, we had the live show to celebrate the championship win in Toronto. And then we had the big party after for your birthday. That was a lot of fun.
We won. It's nice. So usually celebrate birthday after the season, and after a win is always great. So we ended on a win. I was celebrating great. And it's going to be weird now celebrating a birthday before we continue a season, or actually having a birthday during the season, because we don't know what next season is going to come, or when it's going to start, when it's going to finish. I've never really had my birthday during any season. So it's going to be interesting dynamic now that everything's changed.
For sure. Quick questions. So that Trevor Ariza and Davis Bertans will not be going to the bubble. Quick reaction to that?
I heard that. I mean, I said, I talked to a couple guys this week. Got a chance to talk to Dwight Howard. I talked to Avery Bradley early in the week, but I've been trying to get a hold of him this past weekend. I haven't been able to get a hold of him as of late. So I don't know where he's at, but I talked to Dwight, and there's just some things that are bigger than basketball. You never know what's going on with guys' families. And just hearing the background of what Dwight was going through, I understood fully. And obviously he wanted to do it for protest, not because of his family, but there's more than just one scenario, one and more issue, more than one thing that's going on in his life besides the protest. And, with, the loss of his baby mother, but there's a lot of other things that's going on behind the scenes that people don't know about. And I understood. I said, obviously we need you, man. We love you like a brother, your family. We want you to be a part of this, but regardless of what your decision is, we know it's bigger than basketball, and that the things are more important than actually, doing this. So if you need to be with your family, so we support it, regardless. And he was like, yeah, I'm all for it. He said, I never said I wouldn't play, but just a lot going on. So he's kind of, making a decision. We have only a few days left, but I think he'll be with us. And if not, so once again, he's still our brother. We still support him. Avery, like I said, I haven't got a chance to get in touch with him recently. Hopefully I'll hear from him the next day or so. But some things are bigger than basketball, and we have to understand that.
And then there's the option, and a lot of Lakers fans have been thinking about this potential of DeMarcus Cousins coming back into the fold. Have you discussed that? Have you discussed anything with DeMarcus recently? I know he's real tight with the squad.
Yeah, he's been in and out of group chat. We haven't discussed anything directly with him. I haven't seen him in a while, but I would assume that he's 100% healthy now at this point, and probably playing his best basketball in his best shape, because he's able to run. Before, he wasn't able to run. He was only just walking, and he couldn't get in the shape that he wanted to. But regardless if he's with us or not, he's still family, and he would be a great addition to us if we're able to bring him and add more people onto the roster, which would be great, and I think we will be able to bring him. So it'll make us that much deeper. So, but obviously we want to keep and bring the guys that we already have, but if we can add him, it'll be that much more interesting and more fun for us.
For sure. There's a lot of basketball things we discuss, and if we're keeping it real, I haven't been locked into basketball. There's been so much more going on in the world. And it's the first time in my life where I've really been disconnected from basketball. I've never really done it. It's been weird. But one good thing did happen. Somebody, and it's sure not me.
Sure not you, huh? You're on your way,
sure
man.
Not me.
You're next up soon enough. You're getting old enough, man.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Put it like that.
Growing up, getting older.
Yeah.
Big month for your boy. You know what I'm saying? Birthdays, engagements, all those type of things. So I'm enjoying it, getting a lot done before the bubble happens, doing a lot of growing up.
For sure. Okay, so for those who didn't get the hint, Danny got engaged recently over the past weekend, not Father's Day weekend, the weekend before that. Mm-hmm. So as a man who aspires to propose one day, mm-hmm. give me the details on how you pulled it off, because I saw some of the pictures. Some intricate planning has to go into this.
For sure. Well, you got to know your person first and foremost, what they want, what they like. Some people like big scenery, big events. Some people like quiet. And luckily for me, I didn't have to do, in front of a bunch of people. It's not a moment you can ever prepare for or be ready for it. And I'm not a person that usually gets nervous over a lot of things or worried. No, but when you get into that moment, it's a very vulnerable time. And, sometimes things are not going to go as smoothly. The words may not come as smoothly, but half the time they're not even paying attention to listen to you. They're looking at the ring and just waiting for you to ask. And, fortunately, I'll just say, I was fortunate to say yes. So, but when the time comes, man, you said you'll learn and know your person, and you have some friends, some good friends like we have. Amjad did a great job. Our producer helped me find a good location and helped me with the pictures and video. And Scotty also helped. So we had a good group of friends with that. But it says there's nothing that you can really prepare for from this point of what you're going to say or do when it happens, because a lot of times it's not going to go the way you planned it.
More nerve-wracking, a playoff game, finals game, or the proposal?
I try not to think about things until I get to that stage. And this one's a little shorter time. So, like, even before big games, I don't think about it all day, all night. I just know we play somebody, and people are like, "Are you ready?" I will be ready. I'll be ready at 7:30. Usually I'll get, start getting mentally locked in around 2 hours beforehand, an hour beforehand. And it's a little longer process of that, getting ready. For this one, didn't have to take that long to get ready and be in that moment for too long. So definitely a finals game, but for that short time period of span, it's up there.
So when you take a three,
mm-hmm.
there's times it's going in,
mm-hmm.
and there's times you're like, did I get it just right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've had conversations about getting married before, Blair, so it's a little bit easier. But when you got down on the ring, got down on your knee and gave the ring,
mm-hmm.
were you 100% confident she was going to say yes?
I think most guys, if they're asking, they're good, high 90% confident, especially if you got some years in. They're just waiting for the time. I don't think they'd be dating you if they didn't think they would be at this age. They didn't want to see you in the picture for the long run. So most guys that are doing it, they're usually high 90s, 98%, out, usually 99%. Yeah, I was up there with confidence, but there's always that 1 or 2%. But that's not the thought of it. You're not really thinking that. You're thinking like, she's gonna say yes, but how am I gonna do it? And she says no. That's kind of a little wrench in the plans, but everything else is what makes it nervous. Not the fact that you're scared that she's gonna say no. It's just that you want it to be the way that she wants it to be, and this is perfect for her.
For sure. Shout out to Amjad for capturing the moment.
Shout out.
Go ahead.
I said we're a big shout out. He did a great job of finding the location, getting the cameras ready, and getting some good content, man.
I definitely would have been too clumsy to try and pull that off. For sure.
And
I know your personnel.
For sure. And she'll know you too, and she'll probably laugh and she'll have some footage for later on. But she won't think you ruined it. She just knows who you are and understands it and probably appreciate it. And it'll be perfect for her because your clumsy ass probably can get down there and probably fall, pull a tendon or something. But you'll execute it and get the ring on her finger somehow. So she'll enjoy it.
I blame my mom. I was at my parents' wedding.
Uh-huh.
And I was 5 years old, and my mom gave me the little pillow. So with the ring on it, I was the ring bearer.
Yeah.
But she never put the ring on it because they didn't trust me.
So she had you walk in without the ring.
Just walked in with a pillow.
So no trust in you. That's the day it started that you.
She set the stone.
Low standards for yourself. Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha.
All right.
Well, she knew her person so well, but yeah.
All right, now it's time to go to our interview with Zach Lowe. We taped this about a couple weeks ago. We're going to discuss the bubble and all the intricacies behind it. And Danny did make a good claim on how teams who have lost home court advantage can kind of still regain it. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back with more Inside the Green Room with Danny Green. I'm Harrison Sanford. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about outside of basketball, but for the purposes of this podcast, or at least this segment of the podcast, we'd like to welcome in Zach Lowe. Zach, what are your impressions of the season coming back to play July 31st with 22 teams?
I just, everyone's like, who's going to benefit from the hiatus? Who's going to have the toughest time coming back? I'm like, I don't know. I just hope everyone stays healthy. We're going to learn a lot about what the testing protocols and the quarantine protocols are going to be, but this is pretty much an unprecedented undertaking. And I think the only thing that matters is, can we keep everybody healthy, or as many people as healthy as possible? And we'll see, knock on wood. I think 22 is too many teams for that reason and for competitive reasons, but that's what they decided to do. And so, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, it's some news. There's always news every day, and this is actually some good news for once over the last couple of days for basketball in particular. But obviously, it seems as if most of the format it hasn't been guaranteed, hasn't been permanently addressed yet or permanently voted in. Correct, but it seems as if the format, the way they have it with the 22 teams, is kind of more for the bottom seeds. It's, if that makes any sense, it's kind of beneficial for the bottom seeds. What do you? And they came up with some suggestions. What do you think are reasonable suggestions or reasonable ways to compensate the top seeded teams who have lost home court advantage now because, you know, in our Orlando, one neutral site, there aren't going to be any fans. What do you think is a more reasonable suggestion or reasonable thing they can bring?
The only reasonable thing I've heard that came out is if you could no, I don't know. Well, let me ask you, do you think having your own court and your own PA announcer, does that count for anything? Is that going to make you feel more – that's not going to make you feel more comfortable, right?
No, that's not going to change. That's not going to – said losing the fans, they said, I think statistically lose about 5 or 6 points being at home. So the only thing that I thought, and you might have a different, you know, take on this, was fair, or wouldn't say fair, but help the home winning team or the teams that has the higher seeds. The home games, I thought the possessions make sense. After tip ball, second, third, and fourth quarter, that the home team would get the possession of the ball.
I'm going hell no on anything that gives you extra possessions or anything like this. Here are the ones that I can get behind if you want to choose your hotel. I have no idea what the hotels are going to be. If one's going to be better than the other, I have no clue. The other thing I would like, I think, how about pick your own opponent in every round? Higher seed or the number one seed gets to pick their opponent in every round.
That's not bad. I like that idea. But once again, we don't know who that 8 seed is going to be. I mean, obviously, we could probably pick it again. So you're saying it doesn't have to be a 7th or 8th seed. It could be a third or fourth seed, and we just pick whoever on either conference?
No, not either conference. I think that's going to – I actually proposed that. I proposed – if 20 teams come, that was my proposal. 20 teams come, and then the bottom 5 in the West and the bottom 2 in the East have a crazy 7-team play-in tournament for 3 playoff spots, and then you can play around with seedings and where guys are. But no, for purposes of pick your own opponent, I say only in your own conference. And yeah, if New Orleans gets the 8th seed and they're like killing it with Zion, you could pick somebody else. But in the West, man, there's no good choices in the West. You got no good choices. Agreed.
And that is an interesting take on it. I said the possessions for me, I thought it made sense because I said 5 or 6 points. Obviously, it doesn't make it fair. But I said when you're the number one seed, you automatically have to play an 8 seed. And one of the teams that you don't want to face in the first round end up being an 8th seed. Where do you get the advantage? And what does it take? Like, what does it mean for you to stay in the top 1 seed? We could lose those 8 games and be like, you know what, we'd rather play the 7th seed or the 6th seed and, you know, and not be a number 1 seed because we might have to play a Portland that we might not want to play, or Phoenix or San Antonio, whoever it may be. So
it was very nice of you to include Phoenix in there. That was very diplomatic.
I'm just saying, you never know. Any of those teams could jump into a seed.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying because you've played 60 whatever games. You've earned it. You've earned what should be a huge advantage for you. I don't know that there's a fair basketball way to replicate that. And I do think this is one of those situations where it's like on the other side of the standings, right? Some of the teams, when it was unclear how many teams were going to come back to play, some of the bad teams were like, well, I mean, a couple maybe were like, we don't want to come back and like win games and screw up our lottery odds, or like we were set to, I had one team tell me, we were set to like shut it down and lose a whole bunch of games and like shoot up the lottery. Like, no, this is a pandemic. It's hopefully a once in a lifetime cataclysmic event. Everyone's got to put their self-interest aside a little bit and just like, may the best team win. It's not perfect. It's not super fair. I get where you're coming from, but.
Do you think the hotel gives you an advantage as a top seeded team? Like, you think that's more of an advantage than?
I have no idea, man. I just don't. I want it to just be basketball, and the more you go away from what basketball is, the more people are going to be like, feels a little gimmicky. It feels a little weird, like to give them 2 extra possessions or what. The 2 extra possessions thing, I don't like it, but as you say it, as you spell it out, it's not as like off the wall bananas as it comes off initially.
I don't think it comes like when you're watching the game. I don't think it changes the game much. You just the team starts the quarter with the ball. I don't think you even realize how much You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. When you give somebody 7 fouls, you'd be like, why is he not out the game? But if somebody just gets the possession to start the quarter, I don't think it'll disrupt your thought process of how the game looks or feels.
Yeah, fans, I don't think even realize, a lot of fans don't realize that, you win the tip, you get it in the fourth quarter, the other team gets it quarters 2 and 3. I mean, I just don't even think, you're right. I think people are not registering that.
For sure.
Go
ahead, Harrison.
Yeah, one of the things that, as you look at how it's shaped up for the bottom seeds, Danny being on the Lakers and them having the #1 seed as of now, Zach, there are a lot of teams in that bottom, the Pelicans, Portland, who could add Zach Collins, and they could add Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough competition. Who do you think might get that 8th seed and end up playing the Lakers?
I mean, I think you have to favor Memphis only because they come in with a 3.5 game lead. And so there are theoretical scenarios where they don't even have to play the play-in game, right? Like maybe they extend their lead. I don't think that's likely because their schedule is going to be tougher. But even if they get shoved into the play-in, chances are because of how far ahead they are, they're going to be the 8th seed, not the 9th seed. And as the 8th seed, they get 2 chances to win 1 game, right? So they have much better odds of coming out of that than they're not coming in at even odds. So I think probably the math says Memphis. Of everyone below them, though, I think the Pelicans with Zion are the most dangerous team. Portland getting healthy is interesting. Like Portland's good, man. You put that back court with their starting front court, that's a real team. But, Nurkic, it's tough coming off those like traumatic leg injuries. You don't come right back to being your old self. It takes a while. So I'll go New Orleans is the most dangerous threat to Memphis. But people are underestimating how much of a built-in advantage Memphis gets in this weird system they're using.
We just heard earlier before we got on this call, the G League had just canceled their season. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, as you guys were saying, it stinks for the players. Like it stinks for the coaches. There's a whole ecosystem there of guys that are not going to be working for a while. But when you look at the realities of it, the G League mostly doesn't make money or loses money. And, the idea of putting all those of trying to do what the NBA is doing in Orlando with another basketball league and another X hundred players coming in close contact with each other doesn't seem super smart to me.
The draft was also pushed back to October, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Thoughts?
It's a long way from now, man. That is a long way for these guys to wait. But the NBA there were a lot of people who were saying, why don't we just keep the draft in, when was it supposed to be? Late June 20th, 25th, something like that. There's going to be nothing going on. The NBA's got a chance to have this moment here. We could even do the lottery. I heard some teams propose lottery one night, rest of the draft the other night. Like, let's just blow it out NFL style. I kind of thought that was a good idea, honestly, but the league was determined we're not having it until after the season's over. And part of, I guess you have to determine order a little bit. And so we're going to have to determine the draft order through this restart. But I thought that had some merit of just freezing it and drafting.
Zach, that's one of the things a lot of fans, and I think the NBA is trying to be cautious of. How can we make this more entertaining for fans as possible? Because there's a bunch of elements that are just different, obviously, with us being in the middle of a pandemic. One of those thoughts Danny and I were thinking about at the last episode, what if those players that are in the bubble, and let's say they get eliminated, they stay in the bubble? Because presumably the bubble is supposed to be safe if you're within the bubble, if you stay within the realm of the bubble. Uh-huh. So what happens if potentially the players that get eliminated end up staying in the stands?
You're not the first person to suggest that idea, and I even had one person put it more specifically last week. Said, how fun would it be if, like, maybe you're not even eliminated. How fun it would be, like, the Sixers have an off day. Joel Embiid wants to come watch some games. Mic him up in the stands. Give him 15 feet of space around him. Joel Embiid with an open mic watching NBA games is going to be fun. But then again, like, for that to happen, he's got to leave his hotel room. He's got to walk over here. He's got to come in contact with over here. My guess is, I don't know what you've heard more than me, Danny, because you're a player rep for sure. I think the regulations are going to be pretty damn strict to the point of not being super fun to be there. But we'll see. I think it's a good idea.
I've heard the same. I don't see teams staying if they're eliminated. But listen, if teams are there, I think it would be interesting. Not saying you have to mic them up, but to see other teams they're supporting, having some people in the stands, and actually seeing. I think it'd be interesting for fans to see what NBA players are going for what teams. who they're cheering on, what kind of viewpoint they have on the game from the sideline, seeing, because you're going to be able to hear everything, seeing what kind of calls they're debating or cussing out the refs from the sideline. It'd be fun to listen in on that. But so I couldn't see teams or guys staying after they're eliminated, staying in that bubble. But it will be interesting. I said it probably will be strict, but it's going to be tough knowing that Disney's going to open up on July 11th is what they're supposed to open up. It's going to be tough to keep that bubble the way they want to keep it. And we'll see how the country goes with loosening up rules, laws, boundaries, restaurants, places of going. And you never know. They might allow some people in the arena at that point, but I highly doubt it, but we'll see.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So all the world wants, because again, there's going to be no fans. It's going to be a weird environment. The most obvious thing is like mic up the players, mic up all the players. We want to hear everything. So 2 questions. Number one, do you think there are players that don't want to be mic'd up? And number 2, knowing they're mic'd up, will the trash talk go from like R-rated to PG rated, and we'll lose all the flavor?
I think when guys are mic'd up, they don't like to be mic'd up. Mind you, canting around the mic is kind of annoying, and so they're aware of it. Mind you, they might talk a little more, but they're probably talking a little more PG rated than they normally would. And the stuff that is not PG rated, they have to cut out anyway, so you might not get any of it. I don't think you necessarily have to mic up anybody, like in particular, knowing that there's no fans. Just have mics around the court. You'll hear everything.
Yeah, it could pick everything. You're right.
You have a mic on the bench. You have a mic near the bench, somewhere on the bench. You can hear everything you need to hear. You have a mic, by the scorer's table. You have a mic, by the baseline by the rim. You'll be able to hear all those things and what guys are talking about. Just having them, placed around the court.
Makes sense. Glad you're healthy. Hope all your teammates are healthy. Knock on wood. Good luck in Orlando, and stay safe.
Same. Thank you, man. Hope to see you there. Hopefully, maybe they'll let you guys down there.
Yeah.
Appreciate the time, man. Stay safe on the streets, and hopefully your family's well.
Yeah.
We're making some progress as a country. Hopefully things will get better. But thanks again, man. This is awesome.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you guys.
Thanks, Zach.
Appreciate it, Zach.